Chris, what is
Sorry about
going on,
that.
man?
How you doing?
You're doing great, man. Thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time here, man.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to talk about myself.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, Scott never gives that to me during these interviews. He's like, talk to the guest.
hmm The problem is you would do 30 minutes about yourself and not
Oh.
mention Chris at all. That's the problem. Chris, I guess I want to start here in the present. You guys are still able to keep this thing together after so long. I mean, it, I can't believe it's been 30 years since Shannon's gone, and you guys took a pretty long hiatus, and like what eventually brought the band back together as far as like, hey, like, we can still do this, or was it honoring the legacy of the music? Was it, hey, we just miss playing with each other? What
Yeah,
really kind of brought you guys back?
I mean it's all the above. At a certain point, it's just like they're just family,
Yep.
and it's like, man, I miss my family, and we have a great manager named Keith Isola, and he's just really good about just kind of keeping us connected, and but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it was like I just miss doing it, and it's also the way I connect with Shannon on stage every night. You know what I mean? Playing those
Ooh.
songs, and those songs mean a lot to me, and I love the new stuff we're working on as
Mhm.
well. And but yeah, it's all the above, but ultimately I just kind of missed it, you know what I mean? Like we all have jobs and do other things, but we miss it, so we get together and go out and play and have fun.
Sure.
Mm. Now I know when the band started, you were like the last member they brought in. You were from Pennsylvania, and forget. I know they were from somewhere south to the rest of the band, but kind of give us a
I was
gist
the
of.
second to last person.
Oh,
I was
okay.
the second. Yeah, yeah. I was there before Glenn. We had another drummer, and then the Mississippi guys, Brad and Rogers, were like, "Oh, we have a great drummer from Mississippi. We should bring in." So, but yes,
Okay. So to kind of tell us about like the intro of them saying, "Hey, there's this band. They're looking for a guitarist." Like your first kind of meetings with everybody.
well, I had met Brad Smith, the bass player, about a year before I met Shannon. And Brad and I placed an ad, back in those days, pre-internet. I placed an ad in a magazine called Music Connection, which
Okay.
was sort of the Los Angeles, way that you would connect with other musicians and stuff. And I placed an ad looking for a bass player. I met Brad. We immediately became, best of friends, hung out, and then like a year later, he said, "Hey man, I just met this incredible singer named Shannon, and Rogers is coming out, and we need a guitar player. You should come check out this kid named, this guy named Shannon." And I went over in the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh my God, he's exactly what like I used to read about in all the books I read about, guys
Yeah.
making records and band stuff. And so yeah, that was that. I was just kind of in at that moment.
So the documentary, all I can say, came out in 2019, which I feel like it came out yesterday. But I'm always curious when documentaries get made, because I loved it, but I was not in the band, so I'm always curious. When we asked the band members and things like that, did you think it was a great representation of Shannon and the story of Blind Melon?
I really did. I really did. It was challenging because we made the decision along with the director,
Mm-hmm.
Danny Clinch, Taryn Gold, and Colleen Hensey were three directors. And when they made the decision to just try to keep the film as pure as possible, instead of sort of cutting to us,
Right.
now and we're talking about the footage, we just wanted it to be as pure as possible. So there was some challenges there, like how do you tell the whole story just through Shannon's footage? But ultimately, they did a great job. And yeah, I did think it was a good representation of who he was. He was complex and funny and fun, and also super dark.
Yeah.
So I thought it
Hmm.
kind of captured. It also captured the, you know, boy, I hate when people talk about it was so hard to be successful. That's not what I'm saying, but it did capture the sort of craziness of a bunch of 20-year-olds who get shot through a cannon into the universe, and
Sure.
suddenly people know who you are. And I thought it captured the sort of some of that stuff, which just made us feel weird and crazy at all times. And I thought it did a good job of
Yeah, I mean,
capturing that as
it's
well.
unbelievable to think about, like, like as I'm getting older and whatnot, and like you're like, wow, 27, like 27, or however he was. I think he was 27 when he died, right? 27.
He was 28 when he died.
28.
Yeah,
Like
28.
it's still such a baby, you know what I mean? And now you have the perspective
Yeah.
as you're getting older, like these are just, slightly older kids, like making this music, doing this thing. So it is amazing to think that, wow, like, that's so young to really leave such an imprint.
Yeah. It was nuts. It was truly nuts. And there's no like book you can read to sort of like help you get through it. It's just, you're just thrown into the wild. And I mean, we were lucky we had success, but with that success just came this incredible workload. For one, we worked nonstop. And it just, it's hard to just not something you've ever been through before. And you don't have a lot of people you can reach out to. You lean on your parents for, when you're buying a house or something. But, when that happens, it's like you can't go back to, your parents, or unless you have a bunch of friends that sold a bunch of records. It's, you're kind of out there by yourself trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
And sometimes you make a lot of mistakes,
Now, when you guys started, you all decided to live in a house together. Kind of talk us through like how long moving in did you feel like, okay, we became a family, and also the other half of being a family where it's almost like now we're living in a house and now you're starting to annoy me a little bit, even though I love you.
We were getting along great. Yeah, that's the sleepy house. We just needed to get out of LA to kind of focus. There was too many parties, and Shannon was a bit distracted in Los Angeles. So that was one of the reasons to go out there. We weren't there a super long time, but it was really productive. And it was probably the best thing we ever could have done, especially before getting in a van and going touring for 2 years. It was great to at least all live together and get that, learn how to be with one another. But no, we were getting along great then. You know what I mean? Like there was no issues. We were just happy. We were on this adventure. We were excited to be in a different city. And we met some incredible people. The guys from Squirrel Nut Zippers and, all these sort of bands. It was a bit happening down there in North Carolina, And it was just a great time. We wrote songs all day and hung out like family, made dinner together. And it was a really good time for us.
So even to this day, the song No Rain, obviously people know it without even knowing who Blind Melon is. And I always, as a fan, I always found it like a double-edged sword explaining it like you guys to other people. I'm like, yeah, that's that's the big hit, but they got so much good stuff. Like those two albums back to back are two of my favorite albums, like, to this day. I'm curious. Yes, it got you the fame and notoriety, and you could hear that song today, but was it like a little bit of a double-edged sword in somewhere, or, a blessing in disguise?
It was at some point, and that kind of goes back to kind of being young and just whatever, it's like now I look back and I'm like, man, we should have just been so lucky to have, have that song, I always say to people, without No Rain, you don't get the soup record. You know what I mean? If No Rain didn't happen, either we were cut loose, either we would have been cut loose from Capitol, or they would have supported us, but there would have been a lot more involvement on their part because if we didn't have success. But because of the success of No Rain, we went and made soup exactly how we wanted to make it. No A&R guy, no input from the record company. It's a pure piece of art because we didn't have that. Oh, we didn't have success. Now the A&R guys around and saying, hey, we need this, we need that. So I'm forever grateful. Was there a time, of course, in the 90s where it was frustrating because we felt like we made this incredible record, Soup, in addition to all the other cool songs on the first record.
Yeah.
And, that song was dwarfing our band. It became ubiquitous. Sure. And it was, but now as an adult, I'm like, man, I sure was lucky that song became so big,
Yeah. Obviously.
So like, but at the time there was a little bit of frustration. I think there was some frustration from Shannon as well. Like he didn't write No Rain. And I mean, we all wrote songs, but, I think in Shannon's mind, he thought Change was going to be a bigger hit. And
sure.
But, we couldn't get out from underneath No Rain. I mean, No Rain was just way bigger than our band, When the B-Girl is on the Jay Leno show, but you're not on the show to play the song, then you're like, oh, wow, this has become much bigger than us. Looking back on it, man, we sure were lucky.
Yeah.
That's what I
But it's crazy even to this day. Like people, I was talking to my neighbor. I'm like, hey, I got Blind Melon coming on the show, and he's like, oh, the No Rain song. I'm like, yes, but there's so like that's a great song, but there's other stuff barely sounds like that. Like I'm like, you would really like it. 30 years later, I'm pushing that out. It's funny,
I appreciate that, but you're right. I think that was the frustration, is that was kind of the weird song off the record, and a lot of songs were written together and that one wasn't. And so it didn't feel like 100% of all of us, I would say, that song. And I think that was some of the frustration, but I do know that the real fans, whatever that means, they all love the Soup record. So, I know immediately when somebody like actually knows the catalog, when they say, oh, wow, No Rain's not my favorite song. It's a weird song on the Soup record or something,
I listened in a different interview you did. I found it interesting. Like when the video came out and it got big, you talked about you guys were still booked in like smaller venues, and it started getting like dangerous because it was the overcrowding or the excitement of that. And did you guys get any inkling before ahead of time where like, wow, like something really is happening here, guys? Or was it just literally you're in like a small venue and all of a sudden it's like, why is there 7,000 people in this little place?
Yeah, it happened more like what you just said. I think at that time MTV was so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And I remember the day we found out that we got what was called Buzzbin, which just kind of meant they're going to play the shit out of you and annoy everybody, and you're going to be played every 20 minutes basically. But I remember our drummer Glenn saying, every band who's been in Buzzbin goes gold. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, that's cool. Oh, wow, great. But what happened was it felt in my head, it felt like overnight. It was like the video got released. It went into Buzzbin. We probably left for a tour a few days later. And, within days, it turned into like way more people showing up. And you're right. We had already committed to this tour that we, like in small clubs, maybe 300 to 500, seaters, or maybe a little bigger. And I remember the night it happened, we were in Mississippi Nights, which is a place, where is that? Where is Mississippi Nights? Oddly enough, it's not in Mississippi.
I was just saying, I'm going to go with Mississippi.
That was going to my guess. Dang it.
Yeah, no, it's actually not. Mississippi Nights is a club. I want to say, I can't remember. It's on the Mississippi River, right off the Mississippi River. Anyway, might be St. Louis or something. I just remember, I thought there was like a parade going on the street in front of the club because there were so many people, and we had never seen that many people show up for us. So that part felt like it happened real quick, overnight. And that was just the power of MTV. During that period of time, everybody had MTV on in their houses, in their offices. MTV was just on at all times, everywhere you went. So it was just so powerful,
St. Louis, Missouri, for the record, by the way.
Thank you very much. Gotcha. There you go. There you go.
It's been pretty cool over the years. We've had a bunch of bands from the 90s on here, and several of them have played Woodstock. And it's really interesting to hear people's different experiences on on the event. And like earlier today, getting ready for the interview, I'm like, I'm going to put on a little bit of the Blind Melon set, and I kind of forgot that you guys did the whole intro to No Rain, and kind of a similar, and like the scene of Shannon in the dress and his hair. Like some people had this amazing experience. Some people said it was chaos. Others loved it. I'm curious. You got to give us a little insight into Christopher Thorn's experience of Woodstock '95 here.
I mean, it was terrifying, and also one of the best experiences ever. Once again, it just was like surreal, and like, we flew in on a helicopter. I'd never been on a helicopter before, but there were so many people there, you couldn't get the band to the stage through the crowd. So we were being flown in with a helicopter. So that, the day started with a helicopter ride. So that was just bizarre. And then, for us, we followed Joe Cocker, which was just unfair. And so, he opens the show with, You Feeling All Right, the guy who was there, in the 60s. And, but I remember being, a bit terrified. It's weird. Like sometimes the difference between playing to like whatever 20,000 people and 40, 50. Like there's not a giant, like, I don't know. It just looks like a shit ton of people, you know? But then when you're flying on a helicopter and whatever the number is that was there, whether it's 300 or 500, it just looked like more than I'd ever seen ever. You know, it really was, that was a difference. I was like, oh my God. And then you also have the pressure of knowing that it's being filmed, and maybe it was like live broadcast or something, you know, so you have that pressure as well. But it was an amazing experience. I remember being a little frustrated knowing that Shannon took some LSD, and I was just like, really, today of all days, like this doesn't seem like the day to maybe you know, to take LSD. But ultimately I remember looking over and thinking that he just, you know, looked like $1 million, and I thought Shannon was killing it. And but yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was fun, it was terrifying. But it was incredible.
Now, when all the tragedy happened and Shannon leaves us, and you guys are kind of in your hiatus of figuring out if you can find a new singer, was there any kind of thought, as we've seen with like AC/DC, Van Halen, recently Linkin Park, was there any thought of, okay, let's bring in a lead singer that can still be a tribute to Blind Melon, but still have their own voice? Or was there never even a doubt of they have to be somewhere in Shannon's range?
Well, for one, that the songs are because Shannon did sing in such a different sort of upper register vocally. And at that period of time, you know, everyone's kind of singing like Eddie Vedder, you know what I mean? Everyone kind of has that low sort of, you know. So, you know, we tried immediately right after Shannon died, but here's the truth. At that time, it was cassette tapes. So we put an ad out in like Rolling Stone. We had boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of tapes sent to us. At that period of time, even though the band was like, oh, let's move forward with a singer, it was like we made that decision based on, we didn't know what else to do. I think we were just so afraid, but the truth is I was not into it. I just wasn't, I really didn't want to go on. I think it was too painful for me, for Shannon to not, you know, for him to not be there. And I remember listening maybe to a cassette tape or two, and it just kind of broke my heart. The fact that I was sitting there listening, trying to listen to boxes of tapes, trying to find a singer. I really just didn't have it in me. Rogers found some people, and I think we auditioned a couple people at that time. I was just kind of going along with it, and then we never really found someone that could fit the bill, because honestly, it's really hard, you know. And here's the other thing, like Shannon, you had to kind of go through some shit that Shannon went through, I think, to deliver those songs. You know what I mean? Like we had a couple guys, I remember some guys that were, I'm like, yeah, man, like he's hitting all the notes, but like I just don't believe him. I don't feel it. He doesn't, he's not, you know. Yeah, man. It's just, and it's hard. It's a hard gig, you know. But 15 years later, when we found Travis, he delivered the songs with the same, you know, pain and vulnerability that Shannon had, I would say. And Travis was really the first time I'd ever heard somebody sing those songs where I thought, oh, we can go out and play these songs for people, you know. And I also like the way Travis was writing. You know, he showed us some of his new songs. So that, yeah, but that was like about 15 years after Shannon passed away when we found Travis.
Yeah.
So there's a good long period of time. I assumed I'd never play those songs again. At some point, I thought, oh, I'll never get to play those songs again. It broke my heart. I always wanted it, but I just sort of assumed it wasn't going to happen. And I just kind of dug into being a record producer. And I mean, I was working in the music business, but I just, you know, I didn't have my band, you know. And that was one of the reasons why I formed Unified Theory. When I was ready to be back in the band, I just needed to I just wanted to be a different person from the guy in Blind Melon. I was just that guy for 5 years straight. And I just wanted to kind of reinvent myself, and I wanted to try something different. And then, so I did Unified Theory for a few years. And then at some point we met Travis, and that was when we kind of put Blind Melon back together.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, it's truly amazing to see. Like I'm so glad you guys are back doing it. And I know you've released singles. You kind of had the project years back. What is the current status of the band? Is it just kind of touring, writing a song together? Is there any plans on putting together an album? Or
yeah, I think we're trying to figure it out right now. I think it was like, hey, we miss each other. Let's go out for the summer and like go have fun and play some songs. And But you know, within that, the last few weeks of being around the guys, everyone's throwing songs at each other like, hey, I just wrote this. You know, Travis is so prolific.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, Travis could literally deliver 3 songs a day to me if, you know, if we needed him to, you know. He sent me something last night and I was like, this is fantastic. We got to cut this. This is amazing. So, and Rogers and Travis were working on some material backstage, you know, last week at one of the shows. So I think we're trying to figure it out, but I think we like really miss each other. We like each other's company. And I think we'll wind up, you know, making some more recordings and, you know, getting out there. And right now we just want to kind of get out there and play some shows and have some fun, you know.
Yeah, I kind of like the approach of not forcing it too, kind of just letting it come to you when you feel when you feel it's ready.
You know, we don't have a record company. We don't have any pressure. It's really just whatever we want to do at this point. You know what I mean? It's really that.
So sometimes I ask people that I know are fans of, you know, the band for like a listener question. So I asked my friend Joe Fernandez, who's, as long as I've known him, big Blind Melon fan, said, anything you want to ask Chris? He said, why is the song Soup not on the album Soup?
Oh boy. he must know that's a sore spot for me. No, I'm not sore anymore. But you know what? The truth is weird. Our band was a democracy. We all wrote songs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of my songs that I had written. And along with Shannon. And you know, I'll tell Joe he should ask that question to everybody else in my band because I was outvoted.
All right, send the Zoom link.
Let's get them all on. Let's go.
Exactly right. That's a question. Yes, exactly right. You can tell I'm still sore. No, I you know, we laugh about it now, but you know, at the time, I mean, it was frustrating for me. You know, I just thought, I remember even Andy Wallace, who was the producer, you know, loved the song. But at that point, you know, the band was making all our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had written 27 songs for that record or so. There was a lot of material. So it was like, you know, and like, you know, our band's, you know, political in the sense that, you know, everyone's trying to get their songs in. And if I talk to this guy and tell him I'll vote for his song, he votes, you know, it started to get a little crazy. And ultimately, I think the band probably in hindsight does regret the fact that the Soup song is not on the Soup record, but it is what it is. I really love the Nico record is also, you know, I'm really, really proud of the Nico record. So I'm glad at least it is on that record.
How challenging was it to try to go out and make it any kind of music like immediately after Shannon died? Like, was the label giving you any kind of pressure, like, hey, get something out, or was that a personal?
Yeah, I would say the accountants. Yeah, I would say the accountants. Our accountants were like, hey, man, there's like a shit ton of money waiting for you if you just find a singer. Like, you know, you're the guarantee, because we had sold, you know, a bunch of records. So the guarantee, it would have been our, you know, our 3rd or 4th record, right? If you count Nico, that's 3. So you're up to 4 records. You know, there was a shit ton of money waiting for us there, but we just didn't care about money. We were never really driven that way anyway. And I wasn't willing to do it just for like a money grab to get the advance on the next record. And I just didn't have it in me, man. I was fucking heartbroken. That's just the truth. You know what I mean? I just was heartbroken. I needed to like not think about Blind Melon. I worked really hard to not think about Blind Melon when Blind Melon ended, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that kind of leads me to an interesting question. Like, as we've talked to a bunch of different people who've been in like big bands and they've gone off and done other bands. You've been in Afghan Whig, Sonny Boy Thorn, AWOL Nation. Is there ever like a dread of when somebody's like, hey, I want to talk to you, and it's like, I'm going to get like 80 Blind Melon questions, but you might not be asking me about my other projects?
Well, you know, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. If I'm hanging out with, you know, Jimmy Page, I'm going to ask him about some Led Zeppelin. Like, I understand.
Oh, I should have done that. I didn't think about
that. But you know, here's what I will say. When I went out with Unified Theory in 1998, we got a record deal with Universal, made a record, and we were going out and doing, you know, press tours and stuff like that. You know, I would give people like a couple questions on Blind Melon, and then I would just, you know, try to respectively move it along, you know. And sometimes I'd get I'd have to draw the line in the sand and go, man, I told you only get a couple questions with that. So now we're done. You know what I mean? So for the most part, I think people are, nice and they don't want to piss you off. But some people try to push and would ask, kind of too many questions. But I get it too. I also understand,
Sure.
I totally get it. Now that I've been doing this for so long, now I'm talking about every band I've been in. So now it's like a normal thing.
Yeah.
But I tell you what I learned from Shannon. Shannon had to learn it right away at the very beginning of our career. We had this thing hanging over our head that was Shannon sang with Axl Rose. Shannon sang with Axl Rose. So we're a baby band going out and trying to promote our first record. And, the first 10 questions are, what's Axl like? You know what I mean? What does Axl do? What does he, everything was an Axl question. So I think on that first record cycle, when we were trying to promote our record, we all had to get good, Shannon in particular, at just saying, no, we're done with the actual questions. Yes, I sang on, a bunch of songs on that record. That was that. Now we're going to move on to the band I'm in now. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out how to kind of navigate and get what you want out of interviews. That's something like I think you learn when we do a bunch of them,
Yeah. When you, it's amazing. Like I said, it's amazing you guys are back, and it's, I find that with the era of music we're in now, with as far as like lots of festivals and things, like so many bands are able to come back. I'm curious if you now see with, streaming and kids diving into old footage, and are you seeing like kids of your fans showing up at these Blind Melon shows and finding all this new audience? Because I find it fascinating. All these old bands are just alive and well again and reinvigorated, and kids like them.
It's really cool. I got to say, like at some point I started seeing parents bringing their kids to the show. You know what I mean? It's like, it's cool. Like, the Blind Melon fan base is, it's a family. I've known some of these people literally for 30 years. They've been coming to my shows. I knew before they got married, before they had kids. And so now I'm seeing them, they're bringing their kids to the show. So it's a beautiful thing. It's actually the ultimate, like, I'm flattered the most when a kid who's 16 or 15 is like, I'm obsessed with your band. I'm like, how so? You weren't even born, So I'm always just really, honored and humbled, when the younger generation, and it goes back to what you're saying, streaming now, everyone has access to everything, so, it feels like, every new generation gets turned on to, some stuff in the history. And I'm happy and flattered that people seem to still know about our band. The younger generation.
I said this the other day. I forget which guest we were interviewing, but me and my dad went to John Fogerty last year, and you would have thought he was a new artist. Half the audience was young kids in their 20s, early 30s, maybe. Like,
that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool. It's the testament to the songs. I mean, ultimately, at some point, the songs all become bigger than you, bigger than your name, bigger than the band name. It all just comes down to these songs that still need to sort of live in the universe. And we're lucky that we have a few of those songs that I think that pull people in and go, oh, hey, what was that band from the 90s? I remember hearing about that band. They get pulled in. Hopefully they hear the Super record, and then hopefully they become fans at that point.
Yeah. Well, speaking of families and all, I know you have your own recording studio, and I remember hearing an interview you talk about your son doing some recording engineering and all. What has that relationship music-wise been with your son and all? Is he like right in there, like full career you?
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, he's we have a recording studio here in Joshua Tree on 35 acres called Fireside Sound. And you could book the studio without us. You could bring in your own producer, but you can either book me or you could book my son if you can't afford me.
That's awesome.
And he has his own projects. He brings in. He also works. My neighbor is Rancho de la Luna, which is really the most famous studio out here, and probably the reason why we're all out here. That's Dave Ketching's place. Is literally my neighbor. So my son also works for Dave over there making records. And then recently my son has become a guitar tech. So it's fun. I get to tour with him.
That is awesome.
It's the best. It's the best thing. It's the best thing ever. But yeah, he makes his own records in here. He's a great engineer, producer. And I mean, as a dad, it's like, it's just the ultimate,
what more could you ask for? Yeah.
Yeah. I think at some point, a dad and a son could sort of drift apart, when a kid gets to be a certain age. But I found just the opposite with my son, just because we're talking about records, or, hey, did you hear the new, whatever record today? Did you hear the new Bon Iver record? Did you hear the blah, blah, blah? Hey, check out this artist. I just saw this artist on TikTok. What do you think of this artist? Maybe we should bring him in and develop this artist. So it's just
very cool.
It's been amazing to have him involved. And my wife as well. My wife is the one who designed the studio, and the architect, and it's really kind of visually her vision. And so it's a family business.
That's great, man. I was going to say, I was going to comment. I was going to say, one, Chris, thank you for giving us time. This is, like I said, I've been a fan since I was probably 15, 14, whatever it was when you guys came out. And I was also going to comment, you might win the award for best background for an interview. I mean, that's pretty tight. I have a crappy window behind me. I got to step my game up here.
It's actually just a green screen. It's actually a green screen. That's not really what you're looking at.
It's pretty fantastic.
I paid a lot of money for that green screen.
Went to George Lucas for that one. And
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That would be funny if it was a green screen.
So, Chris, if people want to check not only what Blind Melon's doing, what you're up to, the studio, where's the best place for them to go see what Christopher Thorn's up to?
Yeah, good question. So obviously go to the Blind Melon site, Blind Melon Band, on all Instagrams and all the social medias. And I have Christopher Thorn is my Instagram, and then Fireside Sound is the name, also the Instagram, and firesidesound.com is the website. And we just finished a couple more buildings on the property, so we have a whole compound here. We just built a cantina.
Oh, nice.
And I have accommodations. On the property as well, and people can reach out to us there. And if they want to come and book some studio time, like I said, you could bring a producer, or you could book my son, or you could book me to come around. Yeah.
Final question.
Out to the desert. It'll change your life.
Final question from me. There has to be a story of like the saddest bee costume at a concert where you almost had to tell a 55-year-old man, okay, pull up your drawers, rethink your life here for a minute.
Put the gut away, man. Put the gut away.
Well, I have a similar story. When we toured with Lenny, which was just so fun. He was just, first of all, we were all such a huge fan of Lenny Kravitz. And, we did this tour, and, it was kind of at the height of like all the crazy was going on for us, And I remember, bands do little pranks to one another, like the last day of the show,
Mm-hmm.
So one night, Lenny had this amazing guitar tech. I want to say his name was Alex. And he was like, kind of like a smaller guy, my size, but also kind of like as much this way, as much that way, And so the last night they dressed him up in the bee costume and, put him out on stage as we were playing. And Shannon grabbed him, bear hugged him, laid him on his back, and pretended like he's having sex with him. So that's one of my funny bee girl memories of a guitar tech on his back with his legs up in a bee costume, and Shannon just thrusting him and just going, oh, okay, yeah, this. One of
just screaming, no rain, no rain.
I didn't see that in the Woodstock footage I watched today. Damn it!
Yeah. So that's funny. That's always flattering too, though, when you see people showing up, looking like that. But I have seen some. Yes, I've seen some people who I wish I could unsee in that costume.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much for your time, man. Good luck with the tour, and we'll be staying tuned for what you got coming up.
That sounds great. Well, come out and say hi where you guys living?
I'm in New Jersey, and Mike's in Georgia.
I'm in Georgia.
Okay. All right, great. Well, we're playing Ocean's Calling up there by New Jersey, Ocean City, Maryland, up there. Ocean's Calling is coming up here. That August or September?
August? So, maybe I'll try to make it out there.
August or September, yeah. Playing a festival there. But anyway, anytime we're around, holler at me. We'll hang out, have some beers and shit.